He was just shooting at adult height in the hallway. And so he shoots at adult height. We think that his teacher was down when his gun runs out of bullets. And Jesse died right in front of her, between the shooter and her. So we believe that he didn't run because he was trying to protect his teacher. If you cry, I'm going to cry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free, safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum, suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. Boy, I've got an episode for you today. It's actually going to be a two-parter, so it's going to be, boy, have I got an episode for you for 2 days. That's really what I should have said. Today I'm speaking with Scarlett Lewis. She is a podcaster, and her podcast is called Choose Love Movement. She also started a movement called Choose Love Movement after her 6-year-old son was murdered in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So I'm not going to lie, this episode is a bit of a doozy. She talks about her son, talks about that day, and then she talks a lot about the Choose Love Movement, and in part 2, she talks about that as well. But in part 2, she also talks about having to testify against Alex Jones. I don't know if you know, but Alex Jones and all his followers were denying that Sandy Hook ever happened. And he was sued by survivors and parents. And so she's going to talk about that. Don't forget, if you want to watch this episode, it is on YouTube on my channel there, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. And on Thursdays, I've got episodes with my friend Nick Thompson, who is a podcaster, and his podcast is Eyes Wide Open. And every Thursday, we do a little thing called Mental Health Headline Hot Takes, so you can check those out on Thursdays as well. You can also check out my show notes, where there's links to buy me coffee or to check out merch for the Bunny Hugs and Mental Health podcast. Please, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcast or iTunes or whatever it's called, please rate and review the podcast. I can't explain just how important that is for podcasters to get ratings and reviews. So if nothing else, could you please do that? That would be amazing. You can even do it while you're sitting there listening to this episode right now. And speaking of this episode, let's get to it. So without further ado, I give you Scarlett Lewis.
My name is Scarlett Lewis, and I'm the founder of the Choose Love Movement. And I founded this organization following the murder of my 6-year-old son, Jesse. In 2012, I was a single mom of 2 boys. One was 12 and one was 6. And I was a full-time mom, working full-time, and we have a little farm here, so we took care of the animals, and we just had a really normal, wonderful life. And on December 14th, 2012, my 6-year-old son was murdered in his first grade classroom alongside 19 of his classmates and 6 educators in what is still the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. Just devastating, as I'm sure your listeners can imagine.
Yeah, I can't even wrap my head around that phrase, my 6-year-old son was murdered. Like, just that alone is
in
insane.
His first grade classroom. This is happening in our country. Even though some say it never happened, it actually did happen. And unless we acknowledge that, we are not going to be able to solve it. So yes, it's so horrifying and unimaginable, but it happened.
Yeah. We'll get into that too, that whole, some people say it doesn't happen thing, but I don't know if you know, but I'm in Canada actually. So it's, that doesn't happen here. I mean, it does, but
frequently.
Not
as frequently as in the US. Right.
Yeah. And actually, the province I live in Saskatchewan, I think we had the last school shooting. And yeah, there was lives taken, and it was devastating. But yeah, it's not like I don't know, how frequent is a school shooting in the States?
I think we were having an average of 1 a week not always with deaths. I mean, there are lots of gun and violent incidences, but we've had hundreds since Sandy Hook Elementary happened in 2012. So that was 11 years ago now.
Like, it's hard to wrap my head around
Over
that.
350.
Good Lord. So maybe walk me through that. Well, actually, what was Jesse like, I guess? Like, who was Jesse?
It's interesting how you can have two sons and they're so different, you know?
I have two sons and they're radically different.
Both are absolutely amazing in their own right. I have one that's absolutely brilliant and creative and just an incredible, one of the most incredible man that I know. And Jesse was just so fun. He was always happy, always smiling. He loved the military. I mean, he had so many sides to him. He loved the military, so he always wore camo, and he would wear these winter boots with camo on the top all year round because he just loved the camo. He wore this hard plastic army helmet that my friend gave him, and he wore it all the time towards the end. And then, I'd have to take it off his sweaty little head before he headed out for school, but he slept in it. I mean, he loved the military. I have no doubt that he would have joined had he lived, but he also loved little yellow plastic ducks. And he would carry around both with him. And we still have, voluminous amounts of both in our house. I say that he planted little soldier seeds because he has these little, plastic military figurines that still come up in the yard. He was just so, he was brave. He would pretend like he was patrolling the edges of the property of the farm. But at the same time, he was my cuddle bug. He would get up every morning and I'd be sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee and he'd have his blanket and he'd just walk in having just gotten up, and we got those minutes of cuddling in the morning, which I was just thinking I might not be able to live without, but I have for the last 11 years.
So how did you find out that there was even a shooting at the school?
I was at work and I had a work friend who was working from home instant message me and say, there's been a shooting in a school in Newtown. And I wasn't even, I was thinking domestic, I wasn't, because those types of things, they happen in America, but they never happen to people like me. I'm just a normal person. I live in a small, quaint New England town. Those kinds of things don't happen to people like me. So I'm making up scenarios in my mind and not thinking that it was, there are a lot of schools in Newtown, or several. And I wasn't thinking that it would be at my son's school, an elementary school. And then, so I had people kind of coming around my desk, and finally one said, what school does your son go to? Is it Sandy Hook Elementary? I said, yes. He said, well, that's the school and I think you're supposed to leave. So I did. And I had people texting me updates, calling me updates on the 45-minute drive that I had home. And I wasn't worried until I got close and there were lines of cars. I had to park along the road way away from the school. You couldn't get near the school. There was military all around, helicopters. This was early on. So I parked, at the end of a long line of cars, and I ran, looking around, seeing parents leaving with their kids. So we were supposed to meet at this firehouse. The school's at the end of a cul-de-sac and there's a firehouse at the beginning. So they had just had an active shooter drill 3 weeks before. And that was the protocol. They knew it. You leave the school and you go to the firehouse. So
The fact that our children have to do active shooter drills just boggles my mind even.
And I didn't remember this until quite a while after, that a couple weeks before the shooting, I had my mom over for dinner and we're sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine afterwards. Jesse runs in and I don't know what prompted this memory. And he goes, "Mom, what would I do if a shooter came to my school?" And I said, "Run zigzag." I've got my glass of wine. I'm looking over my shoulder at him. I'm like, "Run zigzag." And he's like, I remember him standing there going, "Okay." And so he turns and he runs away. He's 6 years old, remember? And today I'm thinking, I didn't know they had an active shooter drill until after the fact. Like, why wasn't we've become so numb here, Todd. Like, why wasn't I like, why are you asking me that question? What's going on? Yeah. Are you worried about this? I took it so nonchalantly. Run zigzag. I mean, isn't that what they teach our soldiers? And here I am giving him this advice and then just not even following up on it. It was crazy. And by the way, he didn't follow my advice. He did not run, but he told his friends to run, and he is credited with saving 9 of their lives.
Stop.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's too early for this. I'm like tearing up already.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's what's given me the courage to even, come on and do a podcast with you. I'm thinking, Jesse stared down a shooter, and it's not like he didn't know what was happening. I mean, this guy had just murdered his principal and guidance counselor right outside his door, and then he turned into Jesse's classroom. So he knew.
Allegedly. No.
Oh, right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And actually, that's funny that you say that, because I think even in the report, there's a question of which classroom he went in first. I mean, he makes a left down the first grade classroom looking for soft targets. This is, by the way, the same area where he went to first grade. So he knows exactly what he's doing. The principal and guidance counselor, he just shot open the glass doors. And the principal and guidance counselor are like, "What the heck is that noise?" They come out of a meeting that they're having with another parent on the right side of the hallway. He kills them. And then he turns into my son's classroom because everyone was scattered all over the room. And his gun runs out of bullets. So there's a short delay. In the short delay, Jesse calls for his classmates to run. They say it's because he said that they ran. And we believe that Jesse did not, because he was standing right in front of his beloved teacher, who we believe was killed because he came in shooting at adult height, because he was just shooting at adult height in the hallway. And so he shoots at adult height. We think that his teacher was down when his gun runs out of bullets. And Jesse died right in front of her, between the shooter and her. So we believe that he didn't run because he was trying to protect his teacher. If you cry, I'm going to cry.
God.
So don't cry.
I don't know if I've ever cried during an interview. I've teared up. Oh my God. This is just.
It's hard to hear.
It's hard to hear. It's hard to like, and I've talked to people in, other, emotional situations. And oh my God, this is,
so then
that's incredible. Yeah, that's it's heartbreaking. And it's also so beautiful in this weird twisted way.
Yeah. He kills everybody that didn't run in that classroom that's left. And then he goes into the next classroom, and they had some time the teacher put all of them in a small time. I mean, I looked at the bathroom, and it's like, I don't know how so many kids could pile on top of each other in this bathroom. And there was an aide with one of her children sitting in her lap, and she was trying to protect the child. It's just awful, awful, awful. And they were all killed. They were all killed. And then he heard the police sirens. So our local police, the protocol then, this is why we have to be really careful about, learning from, like we learn after the fact, and Sandy Hook changed all the rules evidently in the United States, but we're always a step behind when we're reactive like that. And the protocol at the time, which of course has changed because it was a mistake, was local police wait for state police. So the local police waited at the firehouse while the shooting was going on. The state police blow by them and go right in through the front door. And so when he heard the approaching sirens, he left the room where he had just killed everybody, went back to Jesse's room and killed himself. His body was close to Jesse's.
So what's the protocol now?
The protocol now is for police to approach
quietly.
No, loudly, with sirens. Just go right in, because a lot of times, first of all, these individuals are usually suicidal before they become homicidal.
Right.
And so, when they hear the approaching sirens, and a lot of times their plan is to die by cop. It's there's some sort of term, but their plan is that they will go down in a hail of fire. And hopefully after that, they will be seen. They will be acknowledged, maybe even famous.
Yeah, that's what John was kind of saying.
Yeah.
I don't think he was so worried about the famous part, but he basically wanted to die by police.
Right.
Right, yeah. It's kind of fascinating that I talked to someone in that mind frame that was in the same mind frame as your son's murderer.
Right.
Right.
It is fascinating. And I think we should have more conversations. And I think that if we had more conversations with them before they did what they did, they may not do what they did.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, we kind of got sidetracked.
You did? Okay. That's how my brain works anyway.
Yeah, mine too. But I kind of want to finish how, like, you got to the school, you ran to the school.
Okay. I ran to the school. I looked for somebody official, and I'm like, where's my son, Jesse? Because I see all the parents being reunited with the kids and leaving, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And this guy standing, I remember he's standing in between the bays of, this firehouse with all these open bays, and he has a police uniform on. And I actually recognize him because he's the father of one of the soccer players that my older son was playing against. Anyway, he says, well, if you can't find your child, go write his name down on the list. There's a little room in the back of the firehouse. So if your child is missing, write them down on a list. And it was annoying. I was like, I'm not writing my child's name down on a list. I'm just going to find him and go. And so I had been on the phone texting with his dad, and his dad was further away than I was. So I was like, I'm here. I'm going to be looking for him. And so, I was asking people, like, where's Jesse? And somebody said, I think he ran with his classmates to the little yellow house that's on the left of the firehouse, like right next door. And I was like, oh, thank you. So I run to this little house. I knock on the door. Meanwhile, by the way, it's chaos, if you can imagine, right? Everybody's descending on our town. So I'm knocking on the door, and this older man answers. And I said, have you seen my son, Jesse Lewis? And he said, yeah, I think he was here, but I think they ran to the daycare on the other side. So I'm texting Neil going, okay, go to the daycare. When you get here, go straight there, because Jesse had gone to that daycare. Anyway, he was in daycare. Go to the daycare and look for him there. And I'm going to go in the firehouse. So I'm going in the firehouse, and I'm seeing teachers, that are there, and other parents. And I'm asking, have you seen my son? And they kind of have, for good reason, shell-shocked looks on their faces, and they just look at me. And meanwhile, find out later they knew. And it was an interesting process because we weren't told officially until the end of the day. And it was in the morning, and we waited for hours. So I'm going around. I'm
at this point, are you thinking the worst, or are you just like, where the hell is he?
No, I'm thinking, I'm just annoyed. I'm like, I'm just looking for my son. Where is he? How come nobody says anything to me? How come nobody's responding? And, in hindsight, it's like, it was just such a slow dawning. I love my brain because it just wouldn't, there was just this such a, it took me so long. I just couldn't fathom. And in hindsight, these people were looking me in the eyes and trying to tell me, but I was just like, God, why aren't you saying anything? And I just, like at one point, all the teachers are eating pizza in the firehouse, and somebody tried to push a piece of pizza on me. I'm like, I'm not eating pizza. I'm looking for my son. Like, how are these people eating pizza while my son is still missing? Finally, of course, I go into that back room just out of like sheer desperation. And I look at this list of missing people, and it is like, just a piece of paper that's ripped out of a notebook, and it's filled. And it, like, to think all those people were dead, and I'm putting my son at the end, his name at the end of that list, and that it never occurred to me that all those people were murdered. Never occurred to me. So I put his name down, and then I walk back outside. And, in the meantime, there are a lot of parents there whose kids are also missing. And
are you glad your brain didn't go there right away?
Yes. Well, now, absolutely. Because, I'm having texts with my friends and family, and my mom and my stepfather live in town, and my son, who's now in 7th grade, is in lockdown. Of course, all the other schools in the town go into lockdown, and he's in 7th grade in lockdown. He texts me, he goes, "Hey, I want to come wait with you at the," like, he knew, I guess, from his cell phone. And he's like, "I want to come with you. Can Nana and Papa pick me up?" And I'm like, yeah, have him. Bob ran out to get Dunkin' Donuts coffee because we're just waiting, right?
We got pizza.
Right, a pizza. Like, yeah, come on by. And I'm thinking in my mind, well, when they find Jesse, then, he'll want his older brother, and we'll all go out to eat. This is what I was thinking,
Yeah.
right? But not without, fairly good reason, because, at this point I've been told by somebody in a military outfit.
Uniform.
Sorry. Yes. And I love the military. I have respect for them, and yes, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I probably would have said the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the middle of my story. I'm not finding words very well.
And I'm trying to find any humor, because that's the way my brain is thinking. It's like,
I get it.
This is horrible.
I totally get it.
Let's make a joke.
So somebody says to me, when I had approached the school, because I'm like, if nobody can tell me what's going on, I'm a mom. I'm marching right into that school.
No, you went to the school?
No, I wasn't able to, because they had wooden barriers, and then they had military men with AK-47s along the perimeter. And so I walk right up to him, and I'm like, I'm going in there. I'm a mom. My son is missing. And like, I remember now, he looks me right in the eye, and he goes, "I can't let you in there." And I said, "I don't care. You're not going to stop me. I'm a mom on a mission." I didn't say that, but I'm like, I'm a mom. My son's missing. You're not going to stop me. I don't, and he's like, "I'm not going to let you go in there." And he's looking me right in the eye. And, I was just my usual, like, this is so annoying. And like, he was trying to tell me, but I wasn't ready to accept it. So I'm like, I turn around, walk away. And so, and then somebody else had said, we think that the kids are like, we think Jesse in particular took a contingency of kids, like was leading kids and hid them. Like, and they're hiding somewhere, and we're taking time to find them. Meanwhile, they're actually taking time to identify the bodies. But I don't know that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Knowing Jesse, that sounds exactly right. I bet he took a small contingency of kids out into the woods. I bet it's going to take a while for them to find him. Yeah, he's like so smart. And yeah, that's exactly what he would do. Like, that made so much sense to me. So I'm getting his brother there, and my mom shows up, and, and we wait for hours. And meanwhile, you can imagine so many other parents and family members there waiting too, angry for good reason. And I remember just thinking because I'm a single mom and I was the only one, for my son. And so I'm like, I want peace. They wanted us to stay in that room all together, and there were families demanding answers and all this. And I'm like, no, I just want peace for us. I just want peace for us. So I kept us outside, and they kept us right around the corner out of the line side of the media that was gathering in front of the firehouse. And somebody brought us chairs, and we just sat in a circle, and we prayed.
Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is supported by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 20 years. If you live in Western Canada, especially the prairies, or spent any time here, you've probably fueled up or bought groceries at a co-op. You might even have a co-op number, or 2, or 3. You know if you know. But co-op is not just a gas bar or a grocery store. Although co-op is those things too, it's a different kind of business. Co-op members are owners, and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at co-op.crs.
Introducing the timely children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. The visually stunning book is told through the eyes of a boy whose father suffers from depression. He sees his dad get sad, rest, and even go to the hospital, all while comparing his father's depression to a physical ailment. Sometimes Daddy Cries is getting rave reviews from parents and mental health professionals alike. One critic has stated, "This is a timely and important book that will help countless fathers and sons broach the subject of depression." An Amazon customer commented, "An excellent book to open up a conversation with a young child about depression in a parent. Sometimes Daddy Cries is available in hardcover and paperback on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com.
At this point, are you starting to think the worst? Or considering, or is it starting to...
No, I mean, it's slowly dawning on me. In fact, one of my friends said later, you texted me relatively early on that Jesse's with Jesus. And I don't remember doing that. I remember just not knowing, maybe holding out hope behind hope. And, but I will say, by the time someone came up to me and knelt down and said, and by the way, I wasn't the first person notified, because most of the parents were in that room and we were watching them come out and just drop to the ground in agony. And I was kind of like steering us away because, and finally somebody comes up to me because I'm outside, kneels down and says, "There's no easy way to say this. Your son's dead." I already knew from the other, parents' reactions. And so I just got up and I said, "Come on, guys, we got to get out of here." And I will tell you though, like there were so many people out in front of the firehouse that they had to get some sort of unmarked van to put us in. That van drove me to my car. Remember, I had to park far away. And so during the time it took them to figure out how they were going to get us to our car, I remember, and this was like when reality hit me. Cause at this point I was kind of, I was trying to be there for my son. I was trying to be strong. I'm the leader of the family. And unbeknownst to me, my mom had been emailing my family members. So, my brother and his wife had come up from a neighboring town. It's about a 45-minute drive. And then I saw my brother and his wife that had driven down from Boston. I mean, this is a 3.5, 4 hour drive. And so we had just been notified. That gives you kind of the length of time. And it was when my mom walked over to tell my little brother, I have 4 kids, and this was my littlest brother. And I'm like I was always his protector. I'm 12 years older than him, and so I was always kind of in charge of him. And she walks over and tells him across the other side of the parking lot, and I watch him double over. And that's when it hit me. Like, that's when it was like, oh my God, this is real. this really happened. It takes, like, your brain does this incredible thing. It puts you into shock. And I love my brain for that. It's like how I stood through Jesse's wake, and even feeling gratitude because we were able to have an open casket. Most of the families couldn't because of the damage that all the bullets did to the bodies. But Jesse was the only one with a single bullet hole to his head. And so we were able to have an open casket. I mean, it's crazy what you can be grateful for, even the darkest moments of your life. But the shock was what helped me stand through the wake with thousands of people lined up outside the funeral home, and his funeral, and the dark days that followed. I mean, it's like one moment you're a single mom, you've got 2 kids, and we have this beautiful house is so filled with stuff and boots and dirt and toothbrushes and pajamas thrown all over the place and toys and always a mess. That was our house, filled with joy. And then the next minute, half of it is gone, like gone forever. Like you have to face going into that house and seeing the toothbrush and the pajamas that he put on, that he dressed out of on the floor by the bed. And it's like incomprehensible.
God damn it. It's I don't know why sometimes I can just decompartmentalize myself when someone's telling me a story, but this one is just, I think it's because I have 2 boys that are close in age, and I just remember them at that age, and like I would take on the world to protect them.
Of course, you'd give your life to protect them. Of course, I would have too.
Yeah.
And they're just so sweet and innocent. Like they haven't done anything, wrong ever. Like they're just so precious.
And that feeling of, I guess it's like there's nothing you can do. Like it was like, what I mean? You're on guard for them at all times. You don't think of them in their grade 1 classroom. You have to be there to defend them from their murderer.
Right.
That's, oh my God.
And by the way, when you send your kid to school and they, as his dad says, you send them with a book bag and they come home in a body bag, you're responsible as a parent. This is something that I had to contend with as a mom. I was responsible for his safety. I always thought in my mind, like you drop your kid off, they're responsible. And then you pick them up and you're responsible. Like that's not how it is. Remember that. And do everything humanly possible to make sure that your school's doing everything possible. And a lot of schools aren't. And then you have to let it go, right? Because then worry, I think I read somewhere that you're more likely to be struck by lightning twice or something than killed in a school shooting. So there's no sense in worrying about it, but you have to take action to alleviate that anxiety that you have.
Yeah. This is baffling, man. It's
baffling that we're raising kids that increasingly want to not only kill themselves, but kill each other. And us. Baffling. We're doing this. They're not born that way. Something's happening between when they're born and when they decide to go to their school and murder their fellow students. What? They weren't born this way. So what's happening? It's like, we got to start taking responsibility for what's happening. And by the way, what we're doing isn't working.
Apparently, yeah.
In other words, we got to figure it out. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 11 years.
Like, I remember being in high school and it was like the term going postal, because it was like,
I remember that.
It was like, adults would go to their workplace and shoot it up. And right. I'm sure that's still happening too, but that was like the big thing. And then after Columbine, it just became, it's like the people are getting younger and younger. They're getting easier access to guns. It's just, what the hell is going on? Huh.
Well, that's what I've been figuring out over the last 11 years and addressing by, if you look at our Department of Homeland Security, the department that's supposed to keep us safe based on our tax dollars. I mean, that's why we pay taxes. Number one reason is to be kept safe, right? And if you look at their pathway to violence, it starts with a grievance. It's like a stair step going up. Starts with a grievance, and then it escalates through ideation, preparation. And I think there are a couple other steps, and then there's the attack. So traditionally, we handle all problems by focusing on the actual problem. I mean, think about anti-bullying. The anti-bullying logo is a fist with a circle around it. And so it's a double negative, right? So that's how we usually address problems. It's how we think. I've looked into all the neuroscience behind this. And so we focus on the attack. So we harden schools. And by the way, Sandy Hook, come to find out, had all those hardening measures. They had just had an active shooter drill. They had door locks. They had little key fob things. All of the teachers were supposed to wear their keys around their necks so that in the case of, somebody coming in and trying to shoot it up, they could go out into the hallway because the door only locks one way. So they would never be locked out of the classroom, go out into the hallway in the line of fire and lock the door from the outside in. That changed too. You know what I mean? Because we're so reactive and we're always learning from our mistakes. And I thought, you know what? So let's look at the other end of the grievance, the pathway to violence, the grievance end. How about, and nobody's talking about that end, nobody's addressing it. How about
the first step of the
first step,
yeah,
because it's not how we normally think. And there are fires that need to be put out. That's true. But for the last 11 years, I've been advocating for us to take a proactive and preventative response as well. So I created a program that addresses all age levels that focuses on the grievance end. So in other words, giving kids the skills and tools they need to manage their grievance, to actually grow through their grievance. Think about it, because we all feel pain. That's what we all have in common as human beings, the want and need to love and be loved, but also feel pain. And so pain has a purpose in our lives. It's not there because, for no reason. It's there to help us learn, grow, and be strengthened. And there's a scientific term for it. It's called post-traumatic growth. That, by the way, nobody's heard of. Not many people, even in the field of psychology. This is when we grow through difficulty. And we have to know that it's a possibility. And obviously, and then we have to know how to do it. And so we teach kids all these skills. You having a hard time? That's natural. Like, all of us go through hard times. All of us have challenges, difficulty, roadblocks. They have a purpose in your life. Here, we teach kids how to have the courage, how to cultivate the courage to face them, not resist or avoid or numb yourself, but literally face whatever it is and get curious, to learn from, grow through, and be strengthened by it. What a concept. Addressing the grievance end so by the way, you can reduce and prevent the suffering that not only leads to violence, but leads to substance abuse and mental illness. Makes sense, right? Makes common sense.
It does. It does. It's that time again for the segment, That Some Bunny Special, segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank, brought to you by Co-op. And again, because this is a two-parter, I only asked Scarlett this question once, so I'm going to give another shout out for someone I love and care about who was there for me. And about 7 years ago when I was in the hospital, I would like to give a shout out to my entire community, all the nurses and all the doctors that were so kind to me in the hospital while I was detoxing. My in-laws and family, of course, but then there was just people in my community that put on like paint nights and stuff like that for fundraisers for my kids and my wife. Anyone that dropped off food, and it was just amazing. I'm still so incredibly humbled by everyone's kindness, and it was so very much appreciated. So thank you for the community of Indian Head, Saskatchewan. Love y'all. This has been another Somebody Special brought to you by Co-op. It's hard to, because it's so easy just to feel angry, resentment, feel like a victim. It's much harder to actually take action and do the things you're saying, and like, okay, I'm going to sit in this pain, this anxiety, this stress, whatever it is, and learn from it. Like,
can I just correct something you just said?
Sure.
It's harder. It's harder. And you say it's
Right.
easier to be angry and resentful and be a victim. Guess what? It's not. That lasts an entire lifetime.
Right.
And it only hurts me. And I did not want to be another victim of Adam Lanza. And I could have. So I decided that I'm going to take my part of the responsibility for what happened in my community. Also, wow, what a concept. Because I didn't see anyone else. When your son is murdered at school, you don't get an apology because that denotes liability, right? You get you know what I mean? So I'm like, wow, like nobody owned up to their mistakes. No one. Then there were a lot of mistakes made. There were state laws that were violated, as you can imagine, in Adam Lanza's time in the Sandy Hook school system. Nobody talks about that, but there were mistakes made. Were they ever addressed? Was there ever a committee created to address those and create a protocol to make sure they didn't happen again? No. Do you know how I know that? Because I asked for that to happen. And it never happened because, of course, schools are afraid of, number one, liability, right? We don't want to be financially responsible. And the problem is then I hate to be so judgmental because I'm not, I think educators are our modern day superheroes. They're on the front lines. They get everything. They get all the pain acted out in their classroom. And we're seeing it across the country right now, how much pain our kids are in. And sometimes these kids have never known love until they get into the classroom. So I absolutely love our teachers. And I loved Jesse's teacher and all the teachers across the classroom whose job description is now potentially losing their life to protect their kids. Wow. It's not written in the job description, but it's there in their mind and they're willing to take that risk. It's amazing to me.
And I never, like when you were talking, I never thought you were being judgmental to any individual, just more the system and the general how we think about this as a society.
Yeah, but let me say I want to give a quote that I was given by a man named Aaron Stark. He has a viral TED Talk called "I Was Almost a School Shooter," and he now works with law enforcement to try to keep this from happening. So I had him on one of my Choose Love podcasts. And towards the end, I was asking him about his life, obviously a lot of trauma. And towards the end, I said, oh my gosh, Aaron, sometimes I get so overwhelmed with the systems and processes that have to change in order for things to get better. And he said, no, Scarlett, you're wrong. He said, it has nothing to do with systems and processes. He said, it has everything to do with giving love to those we feel deserve it the least. Wow. Like drop the mic on that one. And I run the Choose Love movement and I totally agree. This is why I did this. Jesse, what I didn't say is that when I came home to my little farm after Jesse's murder, and by the way, this was days later, because I thought I'm never going back there. How could I walk in and see his boots? And, I'm never going back. And, and then it came down to like, who's going to pick out the clothes to dress Jesse in his casket? Like, these are unimaginable things that you would never think about. And it was like, his dad and I weren't together. So it's like, do you want Neil to pick out his clothes, or do you want to go home and pick? And I'm like, all right, take me back home. And so went home, and I walk in and I go straight to his dresser, and I pick out this really warm outfit. Remember, it's December and it's really cold. And, not that it matters, but so I have his clothes, and I'm walking out, and I have this spray painted chalkboard on the side of my oven, and I pass it while I'm walking out, and I just stop because Jesse had written in little 6-year-old handwriting, the height of where a 6-year-old would stand, 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. Phonetically spelled. He was just learning how to write. And
Why did he do that?
well, hindsight is
It's just
2020. How many times have I said this? I believe he had a spiritual awareness that he wasn't going to be around for very much longer. I always say it's a message of comfort for his family and friends because he had that spiritual awareness. Now looking back, I feel like I did too. But also he left the solution. He left what I saw to be the solution. And I thought, that's my purpose in life. That will solve this. And I have to spread this for the rest of my life. And literally it was a calling, because for 11 years, 24/7 almost, ask my team, they get messages in the middle of the night. I am spreading this message. It's now in over almost 15,000 schools, every state in the country, Canada, 120 countries. And it's the one that can get us through this. I mean, it's our destination. It's like we just had to figure out how to choose it to get there. And it is a choice in our life available to us every day. We just have to know that it is. And my work in prisons, in talking with those men and women, they didn't know it was a choice. And by the way, if you're not told, how do you know it's a choice? If all you ever know is anger, hatred, and revenge, and that's modeled for you, and no one tells you have a choice for love, and you've never experienced it, why would you ever choose it? How do you wouldn't know to do that? And I love looking in people's eyes when they realize, oh my gosh,
that's
I had
an
a
option.
different choice.
Yeah.
I can choose it now, even after all I've done. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was saying before, I didn't feel like you were judging individuals. That was more the system. And then you kind of brought it back to the individual. And I kind of feel that when I started advocating for mental health, I was doing rallies outside of government buildings and stuff. And because I didn't want to choose an individual to put my anger towards, and I felt useless. It actually, like you said, it is harder to walk around resentful and full of anger. And then I started working one-on-one. I started working in addictions. I got sober and stuff, and I was boots on the ground, working with people one-on-one, and that is where I actually felt the connection. I could see visually the change in people, and so it is kind of this weird thing that the way you because it is the system, but how do you change a system? You change a system one individual at a time.
That's exactly right. We call them starfish, one starfish at a time. And I feel the same way, and I'm doing the same thing that you are. Really, I am helping other people. And the amazing thing is, and this is what we teach in our programming, when you have the courage to step outside of your own pain and experience and memories to help other people, you literally help and heal yourself. It's the number one thing that you can do, is taking action, taking those positive steps. And of course, that means taking responsibility. So if you don't take responsibility for what's going on in this world, like in the United States, the school shootings, so many people are angry and pointing fingers at people that don't vote for things and things like that. And they're calling for more laws. And it's like, we don't honor the laws that we have, for one thing. If we started doing that, it would absolutely help. And secondly, it's not, anger only hurts yourself, and anger sometimes it does energize you, it spurs you to action, but it spurs you to action. I think we get numb, and we feel like, maybe being behind the anonymity of a screen and typing something in is action. It is not. And by the way, nobody really cares about your opinion. It's getting up off your seat and doing something. And that's what's healing to you. I tell parents, call your school, and see what hardening measures they have. You're thinking about it. Your kids are thinking about it, and you guys aren't having the conversation because you think it's too difficult, and you're hoping beyond hope that they don't.
I'm sure the schools think. Yeah, I'm sure the school's thinking about it.
The school's thinking about it. And so you call and you go, and this is what you say. You go, I want to know how you're addressing not just the attack end, but the grievance end. I want to know if you have a comprehensive program that helps kids cope with pain in their life. And they're going to go, oh yeah, of course we do. It's anti-bullying. We do substance abuse awareness programs. It's like those programs have almost zero effectiveness in schools. I mean, look at what's happening in our world. Not only that, but it used to actually show the effectiveness. If you look them up on the internet, it's probably not there anymore, but it was zero.
Thank you so much for that, Scarlett. It's so incredible that you talk so openly about this, that you started the Choose Love movement, and that you were willing to talk to me. And thank you, John Romano, for making this episode happen. In the show notes, you can go and find the link to Scarlett's podcast and all her stuff at the Choose Love movement. So please go do that. And hey, if you're looking for guest speakers or keynote speakers or whatever, if you're looking for some kind of speaker, you can email me at bunnyhugspodcast@gmail.com, and I can be there virtually or in person for schools, for corporations, for whatever you want to talk about, mental health, addiction, ADHD, podcasting, whatever. I love doing it, so yeah. Thank you so much for Co-op for sponsoring this episode, for Regina Plumbing and Heating, for all your plumbing and heating and cooling needs. Go check them out. And thank you for listening. And please remember to rate and review. So anyway, until next time, please remember to also make your beds and take your meds. Bye.